is being conducted remotely to prevent the spread of COVID. We have provided options for the public to attend through telephone, internet, and other means of remote access, and also providing the ability for person attending the meetings, not in person, to hear each other at the same time. So I would ask that you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Get my screen, there we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we are to our first item is the approval of the agenda. Are there any proposed amendments? Or there we go, Councilmember Rosepepe.
Yes, Mayor, I would like to pull item G, adoption of resolution granting final plat approval for McCormick Woods Phase North Phase 3 Division 2 to the as a business item.
Okay, so you're pulling item consent item G and moving it to business item H. Is what I heard you propose.
That's correct.
Okay, is there a second for that?
Second.
A motion and a second to move consent item G to business item H. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of moving that item, please say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Hearing none, that item has been moved. Are there any other proposed amendments this evening? Councilmember Diener.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull consent agenda item H, just so that we can hear for the record a little bit more about that item.
Okay. So that would mean consent item H is now business item I. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Diener, second by Councilmember Lucarelli to pull consent item H and make it business item I. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of moving that, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? That item has been moved. Any other modifications to this evening's agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the agenda as modified.
Second.
I hear a motion by Councilmember Clausen, a second by Councilmember Rosepepe, I believe. And further discussion of this evening's agenda? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the agenda as amended, please say aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? And then the agenda has been set for this evening. We are to our first citizen comment period. Citizens are allowed to speak for 3 minutes at this first citizen comment period for any item on this evening's agenda. There's a second citizen comment period at the end of the meeting for other members of the public. And if you wish to address the council, please raise your hand and the clerk will bring you into the meeting. It would be use the raise your hand feature. And I see two of council members or Representative Kilmer's staff and I'm willing to bet they don't have comment they want to make. So we will close the first citizen comment period. Welcome, Derek. We'll be with you in just a couple minutes. We're going to approve our consent agenda and then we'll be to you. So we have is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Okay, I see Councilmember Lucarelli's hand raised.
I move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Lucarelli, a second by Councilmember Clausen to approve the amended consent agenda. And so we have any discussion of those items? Hearing none. All in favor of approving the amended consent agenda, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the consent agenda has been approved. We have a presentation by our esteemed guest, Representative Derek Kilmer. Derek, welcome this evening. and look forward to hearing what you have to tell us this evening. So give us a little legislative update. So welcome.
Thanks a bunch, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Thanks for having me tonight. It's an honor to represent you and appreciate your partnership. Let me start by just thanking you all for your service. And not to be Captain Obvious here, but these have been a really tough couple of years, challenging times for our country and for our community. This pandemic has not only been the most challenging health crisis of our generation, but also presented some of the most significant economic challenges. And each of you in local government have been on the front lines trying to help your community. And so to the mayor and to the council and to the city staff, I just want to say thank you for that. I really appreciate your leadership and your partnership. It's worth remembering just how far we've come over this last year, though. Just a year ago, if you looked at the headlines as we were closing out 2020, they were about food banks facing record demand, about record housing instability. Far too many of our employers locally at that time were still really on their heels. Most of our kids were still in virtual school, and we'd not seen the widespread rollout of vaccines yet. And that's why early in 2021, Congress passed the American Rescue Plan, which was a package that was focused on helping folks get vaccinated and enabling kids to get back to school safely, and supporting our local businesses through things like the Paycheck Protection Program. And as you may recall, some direct support for our local restaurants and venues like movie theaters and the like. And also just to provide some direct relief to help folks keep a roof over their heads and feed their families and pay their bills. And that law that passed early last year really provided a huge boost for our economy. Since its passage, we've seen over 6 million jobs created. A couple 100 million Americans have been vaccinated, and unemployment claims are now the lowest they've been since 1969. Importantly, and part of the reason I mention this is you may have seen just this last week, we saw the final rulemaking by the Biden administration regarding the support for state and local governments and tribal governments. In that guidance, there was some additional flexibility for local governments to make investments that your community needs. So those funds can be used to expand access to testing and vaccination, to respond to public health and economic impacts, including investments to make services like childcare and affordable housing more available. It can be used to fund capital expenses like water and sewer and broadband projects as well. And so if the city has any questions about any of that, please don't hesitate to follow up with me or with my team. Beyond that, my primary reason for visiting with your council, and I think with a number of the councils throughout our region, was the passage of the bipartisan infrastructure law at the end of last year. That's a law that's really about putting people to work now, and about laying the foundation for economic growth over the long haul by investing in roads and bridges and transit and water systems and ports and broadband. And it's really about recognizing that we can't compete in a 21st century economy with 19th and 20th century infrastructure. So let me take a moment and just talk about why it matters to our community, and then I'll talk a little bit about what we know about how the funding will flow. You know, making investments in our infrastructure matters to anybody who's tired of sitting in traffic. Like many of you, I've noticed that you can't drive through some parts of our regions without noticing that the speed limit signs are only there for nostalgic purposes. That includes the Gorst corridor, where we're too often stuck in traffic. You know, and so the funding for roads and bridges is a big deal as we work to fix some of these long-term problems that we have in our region. In 2020, we formed a community coalition that included elected officials, including your mayor, community leaders, including the local chamber, local businesses, the leadership from Naval Base Kitsap, tribal leaders, really with an eye towards getting that Gorst corridor fixed. And I think the passage of this infrastructure bill will be very helpful as we seek to get that fix. I'll tell you, it's a huge priority for the Navy. Our tribal partners care about it, because if we can fix that corridor, it may also mean restoring some of the habitat and fish passage. It is vitally important from a congestion and safety standpoint as well, and from a resilience standpoint. I will tell you, although community projects or earmarks were not part of the transportation bill, the infrastructure bill that passed, there's obviously going to be a significant amount of federal dollars coming to the state that can hopefully get put to good use to address some of the issues at Gorst and other roads in our area, including some local roads. Based on the funding formula alone, Washington State would expect to receive $4.7 billion for federal aid highway programs and over $600 million for bridge replacements over the next 5 years. And so I share that with you because part of the way we'll see this funding is through the state and state programs. That again, roads and bridges are only one part of this. Now there are other provisions. It makes historic investments in transit. We know how important transit is, not just in taking vehicles off the road, but also in helping get workers get to work. So it matters both to workers and employers. And I know Councilman Clausen is very familiar with the importance of these transit provisions. We have an important and vital port in our region, and there's funding specifically for port-related infrastructure as well. So it matters for those of us who care about jobs and recognizing our port as a job generator. Making investments in our infrastructure matters for everyone who can't participate virtually because they don't have access to high-speed broadband, whether that be participating in an online class or a telehealth appointment, or even participating in a city council meeting. You know, we've learned over the course of this last year that internet access is not just about whether you can watch Only Murders in the Building on Hulu, which you should because it's terrific, but it's about whether you can operate a business when your storefront shut down, or whether you can take that remote class in college or have that telehealth appointment. And unfortunately, for too many of the folks I represent, they can't. But thankfully, with the passage of this bipartisan infrastructure bill, internet access is treated almost like rural electrification was in prior generations. And it's expected to connect every American, including about 250,000 Washingtonians who lack reliable internet access. There's also provisions related to investments in clean water and in protecting our environment. That matters for everyone who wants to see a future where their kids can make their lives and their livelihoods here on Puget Sound and in our region. I will tell you there is a provision in the bill that I led the charge on in the House, and Senator Cantwell led the charge on in the Senate, that created a new program specifically focused on removing and replacing failing culverts so that we can restore fish passage and help ensure our salmon populations make the recovery where we desperately need them to. So one of my main goals for 2022 is to make sure that now that we are going to see these infrastructure investments, that those dollars come to our region and help address our problems. So part of my goal in attending tonight is just to tell you what we know in terms of being able to access those funds. And I'll be candid with you, there's still a lot that we don't know because the administration hasn't done all of the rulemaking on this. They have not put out very many yet notices of funding opportunity. But here's what we do know. The Federal Department of Transportation will be the lead agency on the bill. I had a call with them earlier this month, in part to try to understand what their timing was going to be, but also to raise some of the priority projects for our district, including the Gorse project. The US DOT is going to oversee a number of pots of money where our projects can compete. So for example, RAISE grants, the Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity grants. Those are grants that are really targeted at basic infrastructure and road investments, maximum award of $25 million. In our discussion with US DOT, they said that they would likely make that a front burner program so that we're likely to see a notice of funding opportunity on the sooner side for that program. That's an existing program. It just got plussed up very significantly. Same thing with what are called the Infra Grants. Those are generally larger projects that have a regional or even national economic significance. Those can be grants as much as $50 million. We were told that those would also likely be an early grant opportunity. Funding for the Bridge Investment Program, for what's called the PROTECT program, which is focused specifically on resiliency issues. And we know, given how many waterfront communities we have, there are concerns around the resiliency of infrastructure. That will be a valuable program to look at in terms of potentially securing some funding. There's the Safe Streets for All program, which is a program focused on reducing traffic accidents and fatalities for drivers and pedestrians and cyclists. And then there's some railroad programs as well. All of those programs and then some will be funded through competitive grant making. And as we learn about those opportunities coming available, we will push them out to your community. On top of that, as I mentioned, the federal DOT will also be providing formula funding to the states, where local applicants can apply with the state DOT that will then sub-allocate those funds. So there's, as I mentioned, funds for highways and bridges. There's funding for public transportation options, for rail improvements. I should mention the state broadband office will also see some of the funding for broadband deployment. When we met with US DOT at the beginning of this month, they gave some specific guidance. One, they indicated that a number of projects could be eligible for multiple funding streams. And so they encourage your community, if you have a project where you want to go after funds, they encourage you to apply for multiple pots of funding as long as you meet the eligibility criteria. On top of that, you should be aware that the administration laid out 7 priorities as part of assessing those grants. And I'm happy to follow up and send these details to you, but they included creating and sustaining good paying jobs, improving safety, combating inequity and improving quality of life for everybody, spurring economic competitiveness, combating climate change and promoting environmental sustainability, and finally driving innovation. And so I highlight those because those are things you may that the city may want to include in application materials as it applies for grants. I will tell you only two programs have already had a notice of funding opportunities. One for nationally significant federal lands and tribal projects, and another for federal state partnership for state of good repair grants for intercity passenger rail. So those are the only ones that have been put out so far. So we're having this conversation on the early end intentionally. Let me, Mr. Mayor, if I've got 3 more minutes, I'll mention a couple other things.
You take as much time as you need.
Okay, so I've focused entirely sort of on the rear view mirror. Let me just mention a few things on the windshield side. You've likely heard in the news some of the stories about what's called the Build Back Better Act that has passed the House. It's still being negotiated in the Senate. There's been endless coverage of the day-to-day, if not the minute-to-minute negotiations on this bill. But I think somewhat lost in the coverage is what this bill's about. And in a nutshell, it's about helping folks who've struggled over the last year, folks who are really feeling squeezed economically, to help them lower their costs. I cannot tell you how many families I've spoken with, working parents I've spoken with, and in particularly working moms I've spoken with, who have struggled to find accessible, affordable childcare. And the Build Back Better Act, as it passed the House, provides some help with that to deliver 2 years of free preschool for 3- and 4-year-olds, to expand the child tax credit, and to make investments in childcare that would, for most American families, more than cut their childcare spending in half. It includes provisions related to expanding financial aid for folks going to community college or going to university to lower those costs. It includes some provisions also to lower the cost of housing. We know that even before any of us had heard of COVID, we had housing affordability challenges, and there are significant and important investments in expanding rental assistance, in addressing the public housing repair backlog, and in investing in the National Housing Trust Fund to build and preserve more affordable housing. I will mention in the Build Back Better Act, there are also provisions related to job creation. And most of you know my background was working in economic development professionally before coming to Congress. The Build Back Better Act looks almost certain to include a pilot project for a bill I introduced called the Recompete Act, which provides some flexible, long-term 10-year support to communities that have faced economic challenges. And that those dollars are designed to develop and implement and carry out economic development strategies and to create jobs over the long term. If you look at, as we introduce that bill, the communities that would be eligible, it's most of the district I represent, including Kitsap County. So I share that with you. If those provisions are included in the final bill, obviously we'll want to huddle and make sure that the city and the county are aware of those funding opportunities. I'm happy to talk more about the Build Back Better Act if folks want to. I will say that there was a great report out of Moody's Analytics that found that the bill would spur economic growth and actually ease inflation and lift worker productivity through some of the workforce development investments and improve labor force participation, which I know has been a real strain for some of our local employers. So I think that's a pretty good deal for our neck of the woods. So I'm hopeful that we'll see some iteration of that bill across the finish line. Final thing I just want to say is by mid-February, Congress has to pass a spending bill. I will tell you the spending bills as they passed out of the House included some huge wins for Kitsap County and for our region, including something that you'll be hearing more about over the next many years. And that's some very significant investments in Puget Sound Naval Shipyard. The Navy has proposed a $21 billion investment over a 20-year period for the 4 public shipyards focused on recapitalization, reconfiguration to modernize those shipyards. Obviously, ours is a more than 130-year-old shipyard. That's important both as we look at our national security issues and meeting the Navy's mission. It's also important when we think about what will be probably several generations worth of jobs in Kitsap County. So we've had the leadership of the Defense Appropriations Committee visit Kitsap County and put eyes on some of those projects. Just today, I spoke with the admiral in charge of that program, but there is some funding to kind of start that, what's called the SIOP, the Shipyard Infrastructure Optimization Program, to start some of that work. So I'm hopeful we'll see an appropriations bill get passed here in February. So there's a lot going on. I know you have a full agenda, so I don't want to take up all of your time, but I do appreciate, again, if I can just end where I started, which is with gratitude for the work that you all do. I'll also mention for both the council and the mayor and the staff, and for any citizens who may be watching, half of our staff here in the district does what we call casework, where if someone has an issue with any federal agency, we go to work on their behalf, whether it's the VA or Social Security, or over this last year, a lot with the Small Business Administration. We're here to help. So please don't hesitate to reach out to my office if there's an issue where I can lend a hand.
Derek, anybody have questions for Derek about his presentation? Councilmember Clausen, go ahead.
Not so much a question, other than, you expressed your gratitude for the work that we do. I would like to say the same for you. I very much appreciate you watching out for our region back in Congress. And I know you and I have had a number of conversations, so that I'm convinced that you're doing an outstanding job, Derek. And I just wanted to pass that on and say thank you.
Thanks so much. And thanks for your partnership.
Councilmember Diener?
I was just going to essentially say the same thing. John beat me to it, but I always find your presentations, your updates very enjoyable. So thank you for doing those and for the work you do.
Thanks so much.
And thank you, Derek. You're a fabulous partner to us. You're always available to me when I need you. You pick up the phone and allow me to bend your ear from time to time. And I greatly appreciate that.
We haven't put a restraining order out against the mayor yet. He's done a great job, though, of advocating for your community, and I sure appreciate his leadership and partnership.
Just doing my job. All right. Any other accolades or questions for Representative Kilmer? Well, thank you for spending some time with us tonight, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye, Derek.
Bye.
Right. We're on to our business items. Actually, we have a public hearing first. We're having a public hearing this evening on a petition to vacate city right-of-way, the northeast portion of unopened Depot Street. Clerk Reinerson?
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Council. Just trying to find my right document here. Okay. Guess I have to move this out of the way first. I'm in there. Okay, good evening, Mayor, Council. Petitioner Stanley Smith and Alice Vasquez Smith of ISB Holdings LLC, owners of 1636 Bay Street, Kitsap County Tax Parcel Number 4027-002-001-0006, submitted a petition to vacate city right-of-way. The right-of-way is an unopened portion of Depot Street. It is directly adjacent to the petitioner's parcel to the northeast and is approximately 2,000 square feet in total area. The petitioners are joined in by their neighbor, which happens to be Stanley Smith and Alice Vasquez Smith of ASD Sound Investments LLC, the owners of 1626 Bay Street, Kitsap County Tax Parcel Number 4027-003-008-0403. That parcel is directly northwest of the portion of the unopened Depot Street proposed for vacation, who together with the petitioner own more than 2/3 of the abutting property, has signed the petition as required by RCW 35.79.010 and the Port Orchard Municipal Code 12.08.010. And at the October 21st, 2021 Land Use Committee, the committee and staff expressed support of this vacation, as well as the council on December 14, 2021, adopted a resolution number 83-21 setting the public hearing for tonight. December 20th, 2021, the city posted the required public notice in a conspicuous place in the alley sought to be vacated and placed a copy of the adopted resolution in 3 most public places. 1 at the city's bulletin board at City Hall, Kitsap County Administrative Building bulletin board, as well as the Port Orchard Library bulletin board. These actions are actually meet the requirement posting and noticing requirements as outlined in RCW 35.79.020 and Port Orchard Municipal Code Chapter 12.08.020. As of today, staff has not received any written objections to this proposed vacation. And pursuant to RCW 35.79.020 and the Port Orchard Municipal Code 12.08.030, subsection 1, the council is prohibited from proceeding with the public hearing if 50% of the abutting property owners file written objection to this proposed vacation with the clerk prior to the time of this hearing. Therefore, with no written objections, the council shall proceed with this public hearing. Staff recommends the mayor to open the public hearing and take any testimony on the petition to vacate the city right-of-way, which is the northeast portion of unopened Depot Street. And Mayor, before you open as you are opening the public hearing, I'll go ahead and share my screen and give you a visual of what the public hearing is about, specifically the location of Depot Street.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation. So at this time, I will open the public hearing related to the petition to vacate right-of-way, the northeast portion of unopened Depot Street. Anyone in the public wishing to testify on this matter, please use the raise your hand feature and the clerk will recognize you and bring you into the meeting to provide your testimony. Is there anyone wishing to testify? I see no one raising their hand, so I will close the public hearing related to this matter. And now we will move on to our business items. The first of which is the appointment of a mayor pro tem for the year of 2022. Is there a motion to nominate someone? Councilmember Lucarelli, you're muted.
Historically, we have cycled through council members to have Mayor Pro Tem. And seeing as how the last time I was Mayor Pro Tem was 7 years ago, I wanted to volunteer my services for this year. I contacted the mayor to find out the dates that he would be gone. There is no conflict in my schedule. And so after this long a period of time, I think it's due for me to provide that service if other council members are in agreement.
So I
I'll
would
second
entertain.
that.
Well, I need a motion. We had somebody raise their hand, but we haven't had a motion yet. Go ahead, Councilmember Rose Pepe.
I move, Mayor, I move to appoint Cindy Lucarelli as Mayor Pro Tem for 2022.
I'll second that.
Motion by Councilmember Diener, Rosa Pepe, second by Councilmember Diener to nominate Councilmember Lucarelli to be Mayor Pro Tem for 2022. Is there any further discussion or other nominations? Hearing none, all in favor of approving Councilmember Lucarelli as the Mayor Pro Tem for 2022, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Hearing none, congratulations, Councilmember Lucarelli.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations.
I'll work hard.
You'll get utilized a bit more this next year, I believe, because of some of my commitments for AWC. So I'm certain you'll do fine. A fabulous job. So we'll move on to item B, adoption of an ordinance approving the petition to vacate city right-of-way, the northeast portion of Unopened Depot Street. Is there a motion to approve this? Councilmember Diener.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the vacation of, sorry, I have the wrong agenda item up. Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance vacating city right-of-way, the northeast portion of Unopened Depot Street as presented.
Second.
Mike by Councilmember Diener, a second by Councilmember Clausen. Further discussion. This is Councilmember Rose Pepe. Go ahead.
No, I just was going to say that, as it was previously stated, this has been through land use and planning committees, and this was pretty straightforward. And I think it's good idea that we vacate items that are no longer needed by the city.
Absolutely. Thank you for providing that commentary. Other comments or questions? Hearing none, you'll be voting on the adoption of an ordinance approving the petition to vacate city right-of-way, the northeast portion of Unopened Depot Street. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the ordinance passes. We're to item C, adoption of a resolution fixing the date for a public hearing on a petition to vacate city right-of-way, the southern portion of Opened Bay Street. Clerk Reinerson.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Council. So petitioners Walter and Roberta Huth, trustees, owners of 1819 Bay Street, Kitsap County tax parcel number 4027 034-003-0007, submit a petition to vacate city right-of-way. The right-of-way is an opened portion of Bay Street, directly adjacent to the petitioner's parcel to the south, and is approximately 200 square feet in total area. The area is currently encumbered by a portion of a structure owned by the petitioners. The clerk received a complete application conforming with the requirements of the Port Orchard Municipal Code, Chapter 12.08, including Section 12.08.010. The Public Works Director supports the vacation as this is necessary to receive a clean title for the federally funded pedestrian pathway project. A portion of the petitioner's property is in the city's right-of-way. Chapter 35.79 RCW requires that the city to adopt a resolution setting the date and time of a public hearing to hear and determine the petition to vacate the city's right-of-way. Staff is seeking clarification from the council as to when they want to hold that public hearing to vacate the proposed right-of-way. The proposed resolution would set the public hearing via Zoom and by telephone for February 8th, 2020 2, which is also at least 20 days from the date of the resolution if adopted at tonight's meeting. Upon adoption of this resolution, staff will post proper notices of the date and the time and the hearing and provide notice to adjacent property owners. And staff did recalculate that, and we'll have appropriate amount of time to do the proper noticing without going back before council. With that, staff recommends that the council adopt a resolution setting the date and time of the hearing of the petition to vacate a portion of the city's right-of-way, which is Bay Street as described. And I will share my screen and show you a visual of what that area is. Asking that the hearing be held on Tuesday, February 8th, 2022 at the regular council meeting held at 6:30 p.m., directing the proper posting of notices of the hearing.
And as Brandy alluded to, this is a garage that's built partially on city right of way, and it's part of our cleanup process as we're acquiring right of way for the pathway. This came to light that this garage was out on a right of way, so they need, this individual needs to, this party needs to buy, you can see that the garage sticking out from their parcel and into the right of way. So they're going to buy that little piece of right of way from us that their garage currently sits on. Okay. Questions, or Councilmember Chang, go ahead.
I was going to make a motion.
Certainly.
I move to adopt a resolution setting a public hearing for February 8th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. on a petition from Walter and Roberta Huth trustees to vacate a portion of opened right-of-way Bay Street.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Chang, a second by Councilmember Lucarelli. Do you have any further questions or comments?
Perhaps just a clarification, Mr. Mayor. So after the vacation goes through, then in terms of then we will turn around and acquire the property. So this is really more of a.
No.
Okay.
This is a property we don't need for the pathway.
Okay, that's what I was wanting to hear.
But we need to clear up title along that segment of the pathway where we need right of way and where people are encroaching into our right of way.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, you'll be voting on the adoption of an ordinance resolution, adopting an ordinance, a resolution fixing the date for a public hearing on a petition to vacate right of way on the southern portion of opened Bay Street. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the resolution has passed. We're to item D, adoption of a resolution confirming mayoral appointments to the Planning Commission and the Building Board of Appeals. Clerk Reinerson.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Council. So annually, the City Clerk's Office reviews the expiring and unexpired terms and or vacancies of members of various boards, committees, and commissions. The mayor is seeking to appoint the following volunteers to fill unexpired, and vacant terms on the Planning Commission and the Building Board of Appeals upon confirmation of the City Council. So for the Planning Commission, he's looking to appoint Tyler Miklowski for position number 3 for a 4-year term expiring December 31st, 2025. And on the Building Boards of Appeals, appointment of Josh Faulkner, Fire Protection Engineering position for an unexpired term expiring December 31st, 2025. And an appointment of Robert Baglio, an alternate position for a vacant unexpired term expiring December 31st, 2025. With that, the mayor recommends that you adopt a resolution confirming his appointments as presented.
Councilmember Diener.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt a resolution confirming the mayor's appointments to the Planning Commission and the Building Board of Appeals as set forth in the resolution presented.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Diener and a second by Councilmember Clausen. It's really, it's exciting to me when I don't have to go out and beg people to do these volunteer positions, when people are reaching out to me and asking to serve. And Nick and I interviewed Tyler McCoskey through the holidays, and excited to bring him on board. Building Board of Appeals, I did have to, ask a few people. That's why this one took a little bit longer, but got it done. And now we have all of our boards and commissions fully staffed. So questions of me, on these appointments? Hearing none, you'd be voting on a resolution confirming the mayoral appointments to the Planning Commission and the Building Board of Appeals. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, the confirmations have been approved. We're item E now, approval of a letter of agreement with Teamsters Local 589 regarding limited term assignment to of non-union work. And Ms. Lund is with us this evening.
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, everybody. The Department of Community Development continues to see record-setting permit and code activity. As a result, the department's at risk of falling behind in some critical areas. One of those in particular is the assignment of street names and addresses into the countywide database that's used for such things as emergency response. The city has a current part-time employee in the municipal court who's willing to work additional hours for a set period of time and has the skills necessary to provide some assistance to community development. Since the current employee is represented by the Teamsters Union, the city has negotiated a letter of agreement with the Teamsters related to having this part-time employee perform additional non-union work for a limited time. Municipal code has an intermittent temporary employee definition that limits this assignment to 6 months. And we're noting that that's not what this is. This would actually create a full-time employee as defined by the municipal code. So staff is recommending the city council authorize the mayor to sign the letter of agreement. And that letter of agreement was sent to you under privilege by Ms. Archer late last week.
Councilmember Lucarelli.
I move to authorize the mayor to sign a letter of agreement with Teamsters Local number 589, representing municipal court employees relating to a limited term assignment for an additional 20 hours a week.
Second.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lucarelli and second by Councilmember Clausen. I think this is just a good practice. We have a good employee in our court that we don't have enough work for, who's a union employee, and we have some additional work that we could do in another department. Prevents me from us from having to recruit and hire another employee for what may be temporary work, and allows us to reevaluate this as our next budget cycle comes up. This agreement will expire and we can reevaluate it at that time. Other questions on this matter of me or Ms. Lund? All right, with that, you'll be voting to approve a letter of agreement with Teamsters Local 589 regarding limited term assignment, non-union work. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Is anyone opposed? Hearing none, the letter has been approved. We're to our council meeting minutes, the first of which is the approval of the December 14th meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of December 14th, 2021.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Diener, second by Councilmember Clausen. Councilmember Terneri, if you've watched that meeting, you could vote on this. If you haven't, you may choose to abstain from voting in this particular matter. So with that, all in favor of approving the December 14th meeting minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? And do I have an abstention? I see a hand raised from Councilmember Terneri for an abstention. We are to item G, the approval of the December 21st meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the minutes of the December 21st meeting.
Second.
Second.
We have the motion a second. Same applies to this meeting for Councilmember Terneri. So all in favor of approving the December 21st council meeting minutes, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? And do we have an abstention?
You do.
Okay, we have one abstention from Councilmember Terneri. All right, we're to our two consent items that were pulled, the first of which is item H, McCormick which would be formerly consent item G, adoption of a resolution granting final plat approval for McCormick Woods North Phase 3, Division 2. Mr. Bond, this is yours.
Yes, good evening. On August 5th, 2021, North Camp Property Investments, a successor to Gem 1 LLC, applied for a final plat of McCormick Woods North Phase 3, Division 2. The Port Orchard hearing examiner granted preliminary approval on this plat on October 20th, 2010. An MDNS, a SEPA MDNS was approved on September 20th, 2010, and the applicant subsequently revised the preliminary plat approval twice, once on January 17th, 2012, and once on October 2nd, 2020. The final plat for McCormick Woods North Division 3, Phase 3, Division 2 creates 66 single-family residential lots and 16 tracts consisting of common open space, recreational space, and shared access, which is consistent with the conditions established by the hearing examiner. The applicant has installed or bonded for roadway illumination, roads, sidewalks, landscaping, water and sewer, and storm drainage improvements, and the city has received acceptable bonds guaranteeing completion of any improvements not yet completed. Streets within this final plat are for public use and will be accepted into the city's road system. And if you look in your packet, there is a list of the improvements to be bonded, and it's mostly at this point lighting, I think the final lift of pavement, and landscaping, and a few very small miscellaneous items. So this one is largely complete. The staff recommendation is to adopt a resolution granting approval of the final plat of McCormick Woods North Phase 3, Division 2. Thank you.
Is there Councilmember Rosebeppe?
Mayor, I move to adopt a resolution as presented granting final plat approval for McCormick Woods North Phase 3, Division 2.
Second it.
Motion by Councilmember Rosebeppe, second by Councilmember Clausen. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Rosebeppe.
I just wanted to explain to council why I asked this to be pulled off the consent. It wasn't to have a Nick come on screen to talk. It was that a lot of times we have items in the consent that have been through land use or various committees. And while that information is there for the public, I think that as our city grows, we need to present as much information as possible during our council meetings so that people know what is going on. So that was my reason for bringing it forward.
Other comments or questions? Hearing none, you'll be voting on the adoption of a resolution granting final plat approval for McCormick Woods North Phase 3, Division 2. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, the plat has been approved. We're to our last business item, item I, which was formerly consent item H, approval of an interlocal agreements with the Washington State Department of Transportation, Mason and Kitsap counties, the cities of Paulsbo, Shelton, and Bremerton for Public Works Emergency Response. Mr. Dorsey, this is yours.
Thank you, Your Honor, council members. The city provides mutual public works aid to its neighboring jurisdictions and the Washington State Department of Transportation to ensure immediate assistance in the event of a disaster, and relies upon its neighboring jurisdictions and Department of Transportation to provide reciprocal support. WashDOT has developed template agreements to govern the terms of public works mutual aid provided by neighboring jurisdictions in the event of an emergency. There are two separate local agreements to govern the parties' roles and responsibilities for providing mutual aid in these two scenarios. The one scenario is in the event of a proclaimed disaster, and the other one is when a disaster occurs, but there has been not been a proclamation of emergency, as set out pursuant to Chapter 3852 RCW. The agreement called for reimbursement of costs expended responding to the emergencies at the responding agency's adopted compensation rates. The agency requesting assistance agrees to indemnify the responding agency for any claims raising from the response. Staff recommends the council adopt resolution number 007-22, authorizing the mayor to execute two interlocal agreements for public works and emergency mutual aid.
Councilmember Diener.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt resolution number 7-22, authorizing the mayor to execute 2 interlocal agreements for Public Works emergency mutual aid.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Diener, second by Councilmember Clausen. Councilmember Diener, you pulled this one. Go ahead and
Yeah, much like the previous speaker, I just wanted to have this heard by the public because I think it's pretty important. And so that was my reason for having it pulled, just so we could walk through the summary and hear what this is about. Thank you.
thank you for that commentary. Councilmember Chang,
Yes,
you don't
I
work
just
for
need to-
you don't work for WashDOT, I know.
Just
You do
reminding,
work.
just reminding people that I do work for WashDOT, which has nearly 7,000 employees. And this Department of Maintenance is not the department that I work in. And I don't have a personal interest in the sense of benefiting from it financially from this agreement. However, if anyone wishes for me to step aside and not vote on this, I will be happy to.
I see everybody shaking their head. No, you're not getting a hall pass. So, all right. Thank you for keeping us informed of that. So with that, you'll be voting on the approval of an interlocal agreement of interlocal agreements with Washington State Department of Transportation, Mason and Kitsap counties, and the cities of Paulsboro, Shelton, and Bremerton for Public Works emergency response. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? The ILAs have been approved. All right, we're to our standing discussion item, which is Veterans Park. I know we got a letter in our just prior to our last, or actually probably the day of our last council meeting, and I believe Charlie and Katie have been reviewing that for compliance. And anything to report on that particular letter from Kitsap County this evening?
Nothing to report as far as additional action items that have yet been identified. We understand that things have been relatively quieter, using a very subjective term. But the code enforcement officer has been pulled in many different directions with regards to the rains that have been occurring and dealing with flooding issues. So we will turn our attention promptly back to pushing for a more clear timeline. As council knows, that letter was accompanied by a timeline, and whether or not that timeline is feasible and or workable is something we are assessing.
Questions for Ms. Go ahead, Councilmember Chang.
Oh, I don't have questions for Charlie, but I just wanted to say that, as you may know, Anton and Northwest Hospitality has coordinated that every weekend, every Saturday, volunteers go and they basically move trash into the dumpster that has been placed there by the county. The dumpster, even though it's there, is locked during the week, so there's no unauthorized use of it. For example, there can't be any propane tanks. So I went there on Saturday, and the good news is that there were many bags in the designated area, and there are also several shopping carts, and many of these shopping carts were actually returned to the stores that they came from. Not the bad news, but I have to say that because of the weather and because that the prior week had been skipped, there were a lot of bags, and we probably made a dent in them to fill up the dumpster with maybe half of them still there. And because of the weather, many of the bags had opened, so the contents were spilling out and they were on top of mud. So a lot of it was also putting the loose contents into newer bags to then put into the dumpster. So it was not the most pleasant work. And I agree with you, Cindy. I wish that I had a hazmat. I was wearing gloves and boots, and I still, just thought, wow, this is really kind of icky. But we did manage to clean up the area somewhat. And it was actually nice to see that there were some occupants that were quietly coming by, bringing more bags and carts. And so I felt that there was a sense of cooperation amongst them, that they're trying to keep it as clean as they can. And I thought, well, that's a good sign, despite the weather. Oh yeah, also apparently there are rats that are also breaking some of the bags open, so the contents are spilling out. So it's not an ideal situation, but it's, I would say it's probably improving.
I appreciate that report, Councilor Chang, and that is one of the concerns that we've voiced, is that, well, the county sees the need to sort that trash before it goes for disposal, it's not acceptable to have it piled on the ground where rodents and weather and everything else are impacting it. So that's something we need to work towards resolving. Councilmember Diener.
I just wanted to add, I think one of the challenges with the dumpster there is that if it's unlocked and available for the people living in the area, then other people are coming by and getting rid of larger items, and using that dumpster for unauthorized reasons.
I hear that concern, but we can't, they've got to process it by some other means, whether that's taking to a secure site. I'm glad to hear that, there's work being done there, but I still believe there's still more work to be done. Councilmember Lucarelli.
Fred, thank you so much for your service. That is very difficult work, and I applaud you for putting in so much time. But I do have to say that to be piling garbage up alongside a dumpster is irrational, and that we really do need to get a dumpster that can be used. And I understand the problem with others potentially using that dumpster, but you know what? The whole situation is such that if we are really trying to help out some of those people in there, then they need to have a place to put their garbage. And the whole sorting process is putting so many volunteers at risk that I really can't go along with that. Fred, I hate even to see you doing that. But we need to reassess that whole situation, continue to reassess it, and stay on the county for making provision for garbage. We absolutely must do that. To have rodents out there going through garbage, we're asking for trouble, and we know it. So keep pushing. Thank you.
More to come, I think, at our next council meeting at the end of the month, where we'll have maybe some actionable items. So, all right, any other questions on this matter? Hearing none, we'll move on to council committees. I don't think
Mr. Mayor, there's going to be a larger cleanup on Saturday, the 15th, also hosted by Northwest Hospitality. I think they're trying to get a 40-ton dumpster. I don't know how that compares to the original one, but they're also asking for volunteers. And so far, maybe 20 have volunteered. So they're hoping to get all of the trash off the ground into the larger dumpster this weekend.
Okay, that's good to hear. I don't believe any committees have met through the holidays, so unless you tell me your committees met, I'm just going to read through when committees are going to meet, and we're going to do committee assignments next week at the work study for the new committees for the next 2 years. So economic development hasn't set a meeting date yet. Utilities was scheduled to meet this evening and it was canceled. Finance, I believe, is going to meet next Tuesday. It'll be at 5 o'clock is typically when they meet. Transportation committee meeting is 5 o'clock on the 25th. And Festival Chimes and Lights, January 24th at 3:30 p.m. Land use to be determined. Lodging tax, it says, in February. Sewer Advisory Committee is on February 16th, 6:30 p.m. You can see all of these dates and times on our published agenda, and also can be found on our website. Anything from the council related to your committees that you would like to report on? Okay, I'll move into the mayor's report. Sorry, Councilmember Cacciardi isn't here. He always loves a lengthy mayor's report, and I wouldn't have disappointed him tonight. So the Public Health Board, we had our meeting last Tuesday. I'm happy to report that 77% of Kitsap County residents are vaccinated as of last Tuesday. That's the good news. The bad news is we're experiencing our highest infection rates of the pandemic. Currently, as of last Tuesday, 84%, and I'm certain it's higher, of the positive cases are the Omicron variant. And as of today, the infection rate is over 1,000 per 100,000 residents. And we shut everything down back when we were at 300 previously. So it's really bad. Well, the severity of Omicron isn't, the outbreak is much worse. The severity of Omicron isn't as bad, but we are stressing the capacity of our hospital system just due to the sheer volume of the infections. Community-based testing is being expanded. We currently have 8 test sites in Port Orchard, and they're primarily our local pharmacies. You can find these locations at the Kitsap Public Health website. So sorry to report, I guess some good news and a lot of bad news there, and hopefully it's going to get better soon. I'd like to also report something positive, I believe. So the incentives you provided the end of last year to our employees with the day of vacation did move the needle. Our vaccination rate now is at 73% in the city. So that's much better than it was prior to that incentive being offered. The Port of Bremerton purchased a couple pieces of property downtown. They bought the former Hanks sheet metal site and the community theater building. And while they have no immediate plans, it was a piece of property adjacent to the boat launch in its parking lot. And at times that lot is a capacity, and their maintenance operations also has a need. So I think, in the not too distant future, the Hank sheet metal building's in pretty bad shape. It might get tore down, but the theater building's actually in pretty good shape, and they may use it for office space or something of that nature. But no immediate plans. As I'm required to report personnel policy changes, there was a change for our police office administrator, and she was changed to police services coordinator. And this was a title change that was negotiated as part of our collective bargaining process and those contracts that you approved at the end of last year. And our stormwater coordinator job description has also been updated to match current practices. I think I've informed you previously, our last meeting this month, January 25th, I will have a conflict with the Association of Washington Cities, and Council Member Lucarelli, as the Mayor Pro Tem, will need to cover that meeting that evening. Our 1406 money, which is the affordable housing dollars that we've been collecting, we entered into a contract 2 years ago with Kitsap Community Resources, and they received a tremendous amount of federal money and never utilized any of our dollars. And so yesterday I met with some individuals with Kitsap Homes of Compassion, and they operate a number of group homes throughout Kitsap County, and they provide housing to individuals suffering from mental illness, and without their assistance would likely be homeless. Their only home that they have in South Kitsap is within our UGA, and just outside of the city limits. And we're looking into whether or not the legislation would allow us to help with operational funding for that home. Not certain that we can. They're also looking for a home within our city and looking to partner with the city. Paulsbo does currently have a partnership with them. Mayor Erickson had nothing but glowing things to say about this organization. And we're probably looking at, if they found a home in the city of Port Orchard, about $10,000 a year to help cover some of their operational costs. And so more to come, but I think this is very promising and could definitely help serve a need that we're seeing within our city. I've also been in communication with Houses in Kitsap for home rehab projects. We talked about that when we awarded the contract with KCR, and Housing Kitsap has identified 2 homes in our city that need new roofs. Both of them actually need ADA ramps. One also needs a new roof, and the other needs deck repairs. And I'm waiting on cost estimates on that, and I'll probably bring those forward for you to consider to utilize our, there's something an opportunity to help keep someone that's likely a senior or definitely living on his low income to qualify for this funding and to be able to help keep them in their home. So more to come on that. And that ends my my mayor's report. So I had an AWC executive board meeting last week, and everybody was congratulating me and calling me Mr. Vice President. And I said, well, wait a minute, the board meeting's not till the 25th. And they said, oh no, the council member in Spokane, who was the vice president, who termed out at the stroke of midnight, you became the vice president. So there is no vote. It just happened. So I knew I felt different on New Year's Day, and now I understand why.
Congratulations.
Yes. So in June, I become the president. So, all right. Report of department heads. Mr. Dorsey, thanks for sticking around tonight. I know that wasn't the plan, but go ahead. Do you have anything to share?
I do not.
Okay. And Mr. Bond? You're muted.
I wanted to report on end of the year totals for building permits. For single family housing in 2021, we finished the year having issued 185 single family building permits. And the big news is we have already 113 either in review or ready to issue at our counter. And so we're going to hit the ground running here in 2022. Beyond that, we have 431 available lots, and I think with the 66 you added to that number tonight, that has now gone up, and that's beyond those permits that are in the queue ready to issue. So there's plenty of supply for single-family homes next year, and we expect to have another probably 200 or so home year. In terms of multifamily units in 2021, we issued permits for 380 dwelling units. And there are 542 more apartments in for permits right now, either for a land disturbing activity permit or building permits. I think the first one of those that you're going to see break ground is the Overlook Apartments Phase 2 up off of Lavelle. And we have been getting quite a few questions because the surveyors are out in the field marking for improvements to Lavelle and to Whittier. And so if any of you happen to get an inquiry from a resident who's concerned about what's going on, Chris Hammer in Public Works did create a simple website that you can view the plans and have a summary of what improvements are being made there. So we have not had any sort of holiday lull in 20 or this past holiday break.
Nick, was this a record year or was it?
You know, I thought it was going to be a record year, but then Lisa ran numbers and apparently we did more in 2019. We had 192 in 2019. Okay. I just didn't have that in my, I thought our previous record was 2018 prior to that. So it's pretty close to a record year. And I think DR Horton has about 50 homes that are, the permits are ready to issue at the counter. If they had picked those up before the end of the year, it certainly could have been a record year. They just, they're picking them up 20 at a time, and they just chose not to come in before the holiday or the end of the year.
Well, tough to build houses right now too, or start a new house.
Nick,
Councilmember Rosepepe, did you have a question?
I did. I was trying to figure out how to turn my video on. And anyway, my question was, and this may be for the mayor too, Sinclair Heights, which I know is city of Bremerton, have they been moving, you know, how far are they moving forward? I drove through Stetson Heights the other day, and they've got quite a lot of building going on right now.
Yeah, Sinclair, my understanding is that one of, I think Century Communities is a home builder that purchased that subdivision. I assume they probably formed an LLC, so it might not be in their name, but they're working on final engineering, and I would expect that they're going to start breaking ground this spring on that project, but I don't think we'll see houses for at least another year or two. And that one they are going to be making mitigation payments to the city of Port Orchard for traffic impacts because all of those trips are coming out of Mccormick Village Drive onto Old Clifton in the city. And so we were able to negotiate some SEPA-based mitigation. So we'll certainly be paying attention to what's happening out there to try to figure out what the timing is going to be on that additional payment.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Bond?
That's all tonight.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Archer, do you have anything to report?
I do very briefly. My law firm is monitoring legislation that is working its way as the legislative session begins, pertaining to a few different topics pertinent to your city, one of which includes police reform. A number of bills were introduced pertaining to cleanup issues. Sorry if I'm stealing the chief's report. Cleanup issues arising from the rather hasty legislation we saw last year, as well as legislation on public works and some planning issues. So we'll continue to keep you apprised in conjunction with your lobbyist as well. I know we have members who have been speaking to some of these pieces of legislation already, and I encourage you to keep track and participate if you can. So thanks so much.
Thank you for that, Charlie. And Chief and I are actively engaged in that police reform bills. We sent a letter off this morning to our lobbyist and our delegation to encourage them to correct some of the things that were done last year. So, Councilmember Rose Pepe.
Could we get a copy of that letter, please?
Sure. Clerk Reinerson, can you make sure that the council members get a copy of that letter? I know it went out this morning.
Yep, absolutely.
Perfect. Chief Brown, since you're all lit up there, why don't you?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. As Ms. Archer said, there's a number of bills that are going through the legislature. I won't get into them today, but if any of the council members would like to speak individually just on some of the impacts of last year's legislation or what the intended fixes are going to be, I'm always available. And as always, I want to give a shout out to staff. We're working very hard to resolve some of our staffing challenges. As I've told the council before, we do have two that are currently in the academy. One graduates in February, one graduates in March. There's 16 weeks when they get back before they're in the field. But the good news is we do have one of our latest brand new officers who is starting solo patrol tomorrow. So that'll give us a little bit of a relief, but
Nice.
the increase in workload over the last 3 to 4 months, as I've talked to before, is pushing them a little bit. So we're working on that. And then on the 25th, I'll have an update on where we're at with our strategic plan. So thank you.
Clerk Reinerson.
I do not have anything further to add.
Okay. I would add that on Brandy's behalf, I know she sent you an email about parliamentary training. I know we sent that to you and the Planning Commission. Some of the Planning Commission members were asking for it. So, and AWC is conducting some training, so we wouldn't have to do that ourselves. Anybody that wants it can just sign up for it or reach out to the clerk. She'll sign you up for it because the city will pay for it. So if you wish to participate in that. So Councilmember Rose Pepe,
No, I was waiting for good of the order, so I'll
okay.
wait.
We're not there yet. Be patient, please. All right. Ms. Lund, you're last but not least.
And I do not have anything to report, but for those of you I haven't seen, I did want to wish you all a happy new year.
You as well.
All right. And thank you for your patience, Councilmember Rose Pepe. Would you have something for the good of the order?
I apologize. Yes, I'd like to welcome Councilmember Mark Trineri. This is his first official meeting, and even though he's been silent today, I know he'll be a full participant and will bring a lot of great skills to our council. So welcome, Mark. Secondly, I'd like to thank Public Works, and I hope that Mark and the mayor have thanked Public Works for the great job they did during the snowfall. That was certainly a tough event, and I appreciate everything they did for the city and the city roads.
So we have just lost power here at City Hall, and I see some of you went dark too.
I'm watching
So,
transformers literally exploding down the road, so I don't know what's happening.
So I am going to do this from my monitor. So anything else for the good of the order? We'll go to citizen comments because I'm not sure how long our battery backup's going to get us here. So any other good of the orders? Okay, I will go to citizen comments. If there's citizens wishing to address the council, please use the raise your hand feature. And we're losing council members
Yeah,
left and
Mr.
right.
Mayor, we do not have a quorum.
Okay, so I am going to suspend the meeting because multiple council members have lost their internet. So fortunately, we've got most of our business done, and I apologize to the public for not allowing that second citizen comment period, but we are without power right now. So the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.